My daughter, a famous chef, called and refused to have me at Thanksgiving dinner. She was afraid that a simple father like me would offend her sophisticated guests. But the real reason was even more bitter. She was afraid I would discover her famous turkey was from the secret family recipe she had stolen. Now, I will use a gift from the past to teach her a lesson. My name is Michael. To the world, I'm just a retired chef, living a simple life in my small home, tending to my garden and my old worn-out pots and pans. That is the truth. But what my daughter Emily and her husband Kevin don't know is that my simple life is a choice, not a necessity. It was meant to be a lesson in humility, a way to show them that true wealth isn't measured by expensive dinners or designer clothes. My phone rang. It was Emily. Her voice was full of that fake, sweet tone she uses when she needs something. "Dad," she said about Thanksgiving, "I'm so sorry, but I really don't think you should come." She was afraid I would embarrass her in front of her high society guests. Her fear, however, wasn't just about my old flannel shirts. It was about my recipe. The phone call ended, and the silence in my kitchen was deafening, a hollow space where once there had been the warmth of 1,000 memories. I sat there for a long time, the receiver still in my hand. My mind drifted back to a time when Emily was just a little girl, not yet a famous chef. I was a man in his prime then, building my businesses, but every Sunday was for her. I remember her small hands, covered in flour, as she helped me roll out dough for pies. She wasn't an innovative chef then. She was just a girl who loved her father's cooking. I sacrificed so much for her. Not just money, though there was plenty of that from my investments. I sacrificed time, my retirement, my peace, all to give her the best life she could imagine. But somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing me as a father and started seeing me as a walking ATM. She married Kevin, a man whose only talent seemed to be judging food and people from a distance. Together, they built an empire on lies and facades. I thought my simple life would ground them, would remind them that true happiness isn't found in wealth, but in kindness, in family, in the love of a good meal. But I was wrong. My quiet life became a source of shame for them. The very things I cherished, my old simple kitchen, my recipes passed down through generations, became things to be hidden. And now this. A Thanksgiving dinner, the very symbol of family and gratitude, turned into a transaction, a social event where my presence would be a liability, a stain on their perfect image. My mind flashed back to her book cover again, the glistening golden brown turkey, a work of art, the arrogance in her eyes, the proud smile, the recipe. It was my recipe. I had shared it with her, taught her every secret, every nuance, every bit of flavor. I had given her a gift, and she had turned it into a weapon. The sadness I had felt was now replaced by a cold, hard anger. The disappointment in my daughter was a dull ache, but her betrayal of my legacy, that was a fire in my soul. She had stolen not just a recipe, but a part of my history, a part of my soul. No, I thought, this isn't about teaching them humility anymore. This is about restoring honor. This is about taking back what is mine. My anger burned, a righteous fire that had been smoldering for years, fueled by small slights and dismissive comments. I stood up and walked to the wall of old photos above my kitchen sink. There she was, Emily, a bright-eyed girl of 10, standing on a stool to reach the countertop, her face smeared with flour, a laugh escaping her lips as she mixed my secret spice blend for the turkey. The memory was so vivid, it felt like yesterday. She loved my kitchen. She loved my recipes. When she told me she wanted to go to culinary school, my heart swelled with pride. I invested everything in her, not just my money, but my time, my knowledge, my soul. The real trouble started when she was a young woman, fresh out of culinary school, full of ambition and ideas. She wanted to open her own restaurant, a modern, chic place that was the complete opposite of my humble kitchen. She needed a signature dish, something that would put her on the map. She came to me, her eyes pleading, her voice soft and sweet. "Dad," she said, "I need the Thanksgiving turkey recipe. Not just the one we make, but all the secret techniques, the whole process. I need your legacy to build my own." I was hesitant. That recipe was more than just food. It was the culmination of a lifetime of work, passed down from my grandfather, a priceless heirloom. But her eyes, they held so much promise. She promised me she would honor it, that she would make me proud. So, like a fool, I gave it to her. Her rise to fame was meteoric. Her restaurant was a sensation. Her food blog went viral. She became a celebrity, a brand. But with every step up the ladder of fame, she took a step away from me. The phone calls became shorter. Her visits, once a weekly ritual, became monthly, then yearly. And with each meeting, I could feel her disdain for my simple life grow. She'd look at my old-fashioned kitchen with a polite, pitying smile. "Dad, you should really update this," she'd say. "It's not very sophisticated." Her compliments on my cooking were replaced by critiques of my outdated methods. Her world of celebrity chefs and food critics had no room for a simple retired man who lived in a small house. I was the secret she had to protect, the embarrassing truth behind her carefully constructed facade. The pain of her betrayal was one thing, but the pain of her rejection was another entirely. I had given her my heart, my legacy, my trust, and she had thrown it all away for fame and fortune. As I stared at her smiling face in the old photograph, a new kind of resolve settled in me. The time for sorrow was over. The time for action had come. She had used my legacy to build her empire. Now, I would use that very same legacy to remind her of where she came from and what she had lost. The time for action had come, but where to begin? Emily had her world, a polished, untouchable facade of fame and influence. I had my own world, a network built over decades, not of celebrity chefs, but of honest, hard-working people. I opened my laptop, the one I used to manage my investments, and started typing. I wasn't looking for a revenge plan. I was looking for an ally. And the first name that came to mind was David. I met him years ago, a young, passionate student at the community college culinary program I secretly funded. He didn't come from money, but he had heart, he had talent, he had integrity. He was a lot like me. All those years ago, before money and fame complicated everything. I found his number in my old contacts and sent a text. It was a simple message. "David, Michael, need to talk. About turkey." He called me back within 5 minutes. His voice was bright, full of the same enthusiasm I remembered. He was now a sous chef at a 5-star restaurant downtown, but his passion for simple, honest food was still his guiding light. We met at a small diner, a place I owned, but no one knew. He was surprised to see me there, in my usual flannel shirt and worn-out jeans. "Chef Michael," he said, his eyes full of genuine respect. "I've missed you. How have you been?" I didn't waste any time with pleasantries. I told him everything. Not just about Emily's Thanksgiving dinner, but about her arrogance, her betrayal, and the theft of our family's most sacred recipe. I watched his face as I spoke, saw his initial shock turn to quiet anger, then to fierce determination. "She can't do that," he said, his voice low and firm. "That recipe, it's your legacy." I then told him my plan. Not a plan of vengeance, but a plan of reclamation. A Thanksgiving dinner for the people who truly deserved it. A free food truck, serving my famous turkey to a community in need. I expected him to be hesitant, to worry about his career. Instead, his face lit up. "Chef Michael, that's beautiful," he said. "It's exactly what the world needs right now. We can do it. We can show them that food isn't about fame. It's about love. It's about people." His words were a balm to my soul, a confirmation that the values I had spent my life cultivating hadn't died with my daughter's ambition. And so, we began. David, with his youthful energy and culinary expertise, and me, with my decades of wisdom and, unbeknownst to him, a vast network of connections and resources. I made a few discreet phone calls to some of my friends in the catering and logistics business. I pulled a few strings with some of my contacts in local government and media. Within a day, our humble plan for a food truck had become a meticulously coordinated operation. We weren't just making a statement, we were building a movement. While David and I worked, the internet was a constant buzz of activity, a digital landscape ruled by Emily and her husband. Their social media was a carefully curated tableau of perfection. Emily, with her dazzling smile, posed in front of their enormous, professionally decorated Thanksgiving table. She spoke of artisanal ingredients and innovative flavors, using all the right buzzwords to impress her followers. Kevin, ever the brand manager, posted articles from his food blog praising Emily's bold culinary vision and her unique approach to tradition. Their world was a world of filters and carefully constructed narratives, a spectacle designed to make people feel envious and inadequate. It was a stark contrast to my world. My days were spent not on social media, but in the heart of the community, in places where the smell of honest cooking was more important than the number of likes on a post. We were working out of a rented warehouse, surrounded by mountains of fresh produce, spices, and ingredients. It was a beautiful chaos. The air was thick with the scent of roasted herbs and simmering broth. David, with his youthful energy, worked tirelessly, his hands moving with the grace of a true craftsman. He wasn't doing this for a paycheck or for fame. He was doing it for a purpose, for a cause he believed in. He kept asking me, "Chef Michael, are you sure about this? A food truck? This is so much work." I would just smile. He didn't know the extent of my resources, the dozens of people from my old network I had called upon to help, the media outreach team I had quietly assembled, the logistics company I had secretly hired to manage the distribution. They all worked without question, without payment, out of a quiet respect for the man they thought was just a humble retired chef. The contrast between our two Thanksgivings couldn't have been more pronounced. Emily and Kevin were building a castle of cards, a fragile monument to their own vanity. We were building something real, something that would feed not just bodies but souls. My hands, calloused from a lifetime of hard work, a testament to a life lived in truth, were preparing the food that Emily, with her polished hands and designer aprons, had claimed as her own. The irony was not lost on me. As the hours ticked by, and Thanksgiving drew closer, I knew our preparation was coming to an end. It was time to stop planning and start acting. It was time for our story to be told. It was time for the world to see the difference between a brand and a legacy, between fame and family. The day of Thanksgiving dawned, cold and gray, but the air was electric. David and I stood in front of our food truck, a humble beacon of warmth and light in the heart of a bustling neighborhood. We had parked it in a small park, and already a line of people had formed, a diverse mix of families, elderly couples, and single parents. The air wasn't filled with the clinking of champagne glasses, but with the sound of laughter, of children's excited chatter, and the soft hum of conversation. The smell of my famous turkey, slow roasted with sage and rosemary, filled the air, a scent I had always associated with love and home, not with status and money. This was my Thanksgiving, my family. I made myself a promise then, a promise that no matter what happened next, no matter how much Emily's world tried to drown out mine, I would remember this moment. I looked at the line of people, their faces full of hope and gratitude, and I felt a joy I hadn't felt in years. This was the real legacy. This was the true harvest. Meanwhile, in her world, the other Thanksgiving was beginning. I knew every detail, thanks to the live social media feeds and the news reports that my friends had been sending me. Her house was a spectacle of opulence. The table, set for dozens, was a masterpiece of crystal, china, and perfectly arranged floral centerpieces. Emily, in a designer dress, played the perfect hostess, her smile a little too wide, her laugh a little too loud. Kevin, ever the dutiful husband, stood by her side, a glass of wine in his hand, a look of performative contentment on his face. They were surrounded by people who were, to Emily and Kevin, important. Food critics, investors, celebrities. All of them there, not for a family dinner, but for a brand event. The aroma in their house, I imagined, was not one of food, but of ambition, of carefully managed public relations. It was a beautiful prison, a golden cage of their own making. My heart ached for the girl who used to help me in my kitchen, the girl who had loved the smell of my cinnamon and the taste of my homemade cranberry sauce. But the ache was fading, replaced by a steely resolve. This was the moment of truth. We had prepared our food. We had prepared our story. We were ready. As I handed a plate of turkey and stuffing to an elderly woman with a tear in her eye, I looked at the clock. The time was ticking. It was almost 7 in the evening. The guests at Emily's party would have just finished their first course. It was time for the main event. It was time. I turned on my phone's camera, adjusted it on a small tripod, and began the live stream. "Hello, everyone," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was pounding. "My name is Michael, and this is my Thanksgiving dinner." I panned the camera to show the long line of people waiting patiently, their faces filled with a warmth that money couldn't buy. "Over there," I said, pointing to a table laden with food, "is the turkey, a recipe that has been in my family for generations. A recipe that, until now, was a secret." I paused, letting the words hang in the digital air. Meanwhile, at Emily's home, the live feed popped up on her guests' phones, a strange, unexpected interruption to their curated evening. I saw her face in the small video I was also watching, a look of confusion, then annoyance. Kevin, beside her, was whispering something, probably telling her to ignore it. "I gave that recipe to my daughter," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "I gave it to her with the promise that she would honor it. But instead of honoring it, she used it to build an empire of lies, an empire of arrogance and greed." On the live feed, people were commenting, asking questions, a storm of digital curiosity. In Emily's living room, the polite murmurs had stopped. The air was thick, with a tension that was far heavier than the scent of her artisanal food. "You see," I said, my voice now a low, powerful growl. "Emily told me my simple life was an embarrassment. She told me I wasn't welcome at her table because of who I am. But what she didn't know is that my simple life is a choice I made to teach my children the value of humility." The shock on Emily's face was palpable. Kevin's mouth had fallen open. The guests were looking at them, then back at their phones, a silent judgment filling the room. "You see this food truck?" I asked, panning the camera to show our bustling operation. "This is the result of my true passion. And this, my friends, is what a Thanksgiving dinner should look like." My voice, which had been warm and emotional, suddenly turned cold, hard as steel. "Emily, you've been so busy trying to impress the world that you forgot the most important thing. Family. But there's another thing you forgot. You forgot who I am." I could see her face on my small screen, a flicker of fear in her eyes, then a flash of contempt. She probably thought I was going to make some dramatic, empty threat. "I'm not just a retired chef," I said, my voice cutting through the polite silence of her dinner party. "I'm also the man who owns the building your new restaurant is in." Her head snapped up. Her eyes, wide with disbelief, met the camera. She shook her head, a denial forming on her lips, but I wasn't done. "And I'm the one who funded the venture capital firm that invests in your brand." The color drained from her face. I could see her looking at Kevin, who was now frozen in terror. The guests, those important people, were whispering, their faces a mix of shock and morbid curiosity. "I am the one," I finished, my voice a quiet, powerful echo of their worst fears, "who has been quietly funding the very life you are so proud of. I am the one who gave you everything, and all I ever asked for was a little respect, as of today. That funding has been cut." The camera captured the complete, soul-crushing silence that followed. Emily's perfectly curated world came crashing down, her mouth hung open, a silent scream of disbelief. Kevin's face had turned ashen. I looked directly into the camera, not at them, but at the world. A legacy is not about money, it's about gratitude, it's about love, and it's something that can never be stolen. The live stream ended, but the silence did not last. Within minutes, the internet exploded. My video went viral, a digital wildfire that swept across every social media platform, news channel, and food blog. The comments section was a torrent of outrage and disbelief. People who had once praised Emily's bold vision were now calling her a fraud and a thief. My face, once hidden from the world, was now everywhere, a symbol of quiet integrity and righteous anger. The headline on a major culinary website read, "The Emperor's New Recipe. Celebrity Chef Exposed in Thanksgiving Day Scandal." Another, a scathing review on Kevin's blog, simply said, "A critic of food and a man without character." Emily's carefully constructed world came crashing down with a speed that was almost breathtaking. Her restaurant, once a haven for the city's elite, was now a place of protest. People left scathing one-star reviews, sharing my video in the comments. Reservations were canceled by the dozens. Food critics who had once fawned over her food now wrote blistering takedowns, their words dripping with the same kind of righteous fury I had felt for so long. Kevin's world, too, was in ruins. His reputation as an impartial food critic was gone. Who would trust a man whose own wife had built her career on a lie? The contracts for his blog were terminated. His sponsors, who had once eagerly paid him to promote their products, were now running for cover. The empire they had built on my stolen recipe and my hidden money was collapsing before my very eyes. But as their world fell apart, my world began to expand. My food truck was no longer just a humble operation. It was a phenomenon. People were lining up for blocks, not just for the turkey, but to meet me, to shake my hand, to tell me that my story had inspired them. David, with his youthful enthusiasm, was overwhelmed. We had to hire more staff, buy more ingredients, expand our operation. Media outlets, once so eager to get Emily's take on innovative cuisine, were now begging for an interview with me, the man they had once called a simple, retired chef. They wanted to know about my philosophy, about my investments, about the man behind the flannel shirt. They wanted to know about the legacy that Emily had tried to bury. I was no longer an invisible man. I was a symbol of integrity, of truth, and of the power of a legacy built on something real. As Emily and Kevin's world crumbled, mine was being rebuilt, brick by brick, with the love and support of a community I didn't even know I had. The media, once a tool for Emily's self-promotion, now sought me out. I was no longer an invisible man living in a simple house. I was Michael, the Thanksgiving chef, the humble millionaire, the man who taught a lesson. Every day my phone rang with requests for interviews. Major news networks wanted my story. Culinary magazines wanted to know my philosophy on food. I was invited to speak at culinary schools and business forums, not about market trends or profit margins, but about integrity, about legacy, about the true meaning of wealth. But the real reward wasn't the fame, it was the faces. Every morning when David and I opened the food truck, the line was longer than the day before. The people weren't just coming for the turkey, they were coming for the story. They wanted a piece of the truth, a piece of the authenticity. A young couple told me my story had inspired them to quit their corporate jobs and open a small bakery. An elderly man, with tears in his eyes, said I had reminded him of his own father. My little food truck, a symbol of my quiet rebellion, had become a hub of hope, a place where people gathered not to show off, but to connect. David, my young protege, was a tireless force of nature. His eyes, once full of youthful ambition, were now filled with a quiet pride. "Chef Michael," he would say, as we packed up every night, "we're not just selling food, we're selling a feeling, a message, and the local community." They embraced me like one of their own. They called me by my first name. They would bring me pies, homemade jams, and even a few extra vegetables from their gardens. They were a family I had chosen, and they had chosen me back. My simple home, once a lonely retreat, was now a place of laughter and shared meals. People would stop by to say hello, to share their own stories, to sit and have a cup of coffee. They saw past the flannel shirts and the small house. They saw a man who had stood up for his values, and in doing so, had given them permission to do the same. This wasn't the life of a celebrity chef or a wealthy investor. It was the life of a man who had lost everything, only to find something far more valuable, a purpose, a community, and a legacy that could never be stolen, because it was given freely, with love. One cold afternoon she came. I was in my garden, pruning a rose bush, a simple task that grounded me in the present. I heard the crunch of gravel as a car pulled into my driveway. It wasn't a sleek new vehicle, like the ones Emily and Kevin used to drive. It was an old, beat-up sedan, and from it a ghost emerged. It was Emily, but not the Emily I had seen in magazines or on television. Her clothes were simple, her hair was unkempt, and the designer handbag was gone. Her face was pale, and her eyes were filled with a raw, honest pain I had never seen before. She looked small, lost. She walked slowly towards me, and for the first time in years, she didn't seem to be playing a part. "Dad," she said, her voice a fragile whisper. I I'm so sorry." The words hung in the air, a truth that had been buried for too long. My heart, which I thought had healed, gave a sharp, painful jolt. I looked at her, at the woman who had hurt me so deeply, and I saw a scared girl, not a celebrity chef. I put down my clippers, my hands trembling slightly. "Emily," was all I could say. She started to cry then, a quiet, broken sob that tore at my soul. "I was so ashamed of you," she confessed, her voice cracking. "I was ashamed of this house, of your simple life, of the food truck. I was so busy trying to be someone else that I forgot who I was. I forgot you. I used your love, your legacy, your trust, and I threw it all away." She was talking fast now, a torrent of shame and regret pouring out of her. "I was a thief, Dad. I didn't just steal a recipe. I stole your heart, and I am so, so sorry." I didn't say anything. I just stood there, listening to her pour out her soul. I was still angry, still hurt, but beneath all of that was a flicker of something new. Hope. The hope that the daughter I had lost was finally beginning to find her way back home. I looked at her, and for the first time in a very long time, I saw not a celebrity, not a brand, but just Emily, my daughter. I stood there watching her cry, and felt the anger in my heart, the pain I had held onto for so long, begin to melt away. The bitterness, the resentment, it all seemed so small now compared to the sight of my daughter finally home. I reached out, and for the first time, in what felt like a lifetime, I held her. She buried her face in my shoulder, and I could feel the years of shame and sorrow pouring out of her. "It's okay, Em," I whispered, using the nickname I hadn't used in years. "It's going to be okay." That was the beginning. Forgiveness wasn't a single word, a single moment. It was a process. It was Emily coming back to the food truck the next day, not in a designer apron, but in a simple t-shirt and jeans, her hands ready to work. It was her standing beside David and me, learning to chop vegetables, to fold dough, to stir the sauce, not with the polished movements of a celebrity chef, but with the clumsy, heartfelt motions of a student. She asked me questions, not about how to make a dish more innovative, but about why a certain spice worked, about the stories behind each recipe. She was hungry for knowledge, for connection, for the legacy she had once so carelessly discarded. And then, a few weeks later, Kevin came. He looked nothing like the arrogant food critic who had judged my life so harshly. He was humble, his eyes full of a quiet shame. He didn't offer excuses. He didn't ask for anything. He just came to work. He started at the bottom, cleaning the kitchen, carrying boxes, doing the menial work he had once looked down on. I saw him talking to David, a real conversation, not a performance. I saw him looking at Emily with a new kind of love, not the love of a partner in crime, but the love of a man who was watching his wife find her true self. Our little food truck became more than just a business. It became a home, a place where a father and daughter, a husband and a wife, a mentor and a protege could rebuild their lives, one meal at a time. The public still came, but now they weren't just there for the story. They were there for the atmosphere, for the honest food, for the family. I had given Emily my recipe once before, and she had used it to chase fame. I was giving it to her again, but this time she was using it to find her way back home. And for the first time in years, I felt a deep sense of peace. My legacy was not just a recipe, but a family, whole and unbroken. A family that had been lost, but was now, finally, found. And so, Thanksgiving came and went, but its true meaning, its true harvest, had just begun. This is a story about food, about family, about a recipe passed down through generations. But more than that, it is a family story about the true nature of love and forgiveness. The world often tells us that our value lies in our fame, in our fortune, in our worldly success. But as I learned, true value is found in the quiet moments, in the humble kitchen, in the forgiving heart. It is a gift from God, a lesson in humility, a reminder that we are all flawed, all in need of a second chance. My journey taught me that a legacy is not a brand, not a bank account, not even a recipe. A legacy is the love you leave behind, the kindness you show, the forgiveness you offer. It is the grace of God that allows us to rebuild what we have broken, This family story is a testament to that truth. It is a reminder that no matter how far we stray, there is always a path back home. And it is the love of God that guides us back. This family story is a testament to the idea that some things cannot be stolen, only shared. If you enjoyed this story of redemption and forgiveness, please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel for more true stories about life, love, and second chances. Let us know in the comments what you think the true meaning of Thanksgiving is. And remember, the greatest legacy you can leave is not what you have, but who you are.